Here I find you. I think I can love you.
So Travis, thanks for being on again with How Strong. Loved our last conversation about where RKS started and how you got to where you were and the challenges. I think it's amazing. We have Kenny Sanders from Old Soren Motorcycle. This dude, and I can tell you, everybody that I've had on the podcast, we've all met in very strange ways. And I'm going to tell you, Travis, how I met Kenny. I was actually going to one of my favorite coffee places in Redondo Beach called Boy and the Bear. And there's a garage. It's sort of catty corner to the coffee place. And it's this bar called, it wasn't a bar. It was just a car club called Garage 77. And I've always wanted to go inside. I never did. It had all these old cars outside. They had Broncos. They had Ferraris. And I was getting coffee. And I was in a Karma Rivera. I used to work for Karma. It's a beautiful car. And I was meeting someone there. And I parked on the street. And right where I was parking, Kenny was there on the sidewalk with his Old Soren motorcycle, electric motorcycle. And it was just sort of right time, right place, bumped into this guy. And he was talking about the Karma, and I was talking about his bike. And he was kind of telling me, some of the things that he needs. And this conversation took a long time. And he's like, have you ever been inside this place? I'm like, no, I've always wanted to. And he was part of it. He walks me inside, and it looks similar to this place, but behind you looks a lot better, Kenny. This is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, this is not Garage 77, but it's a private collection of my buddy Wayne Dempsey.
Yeah, so this looks like an amped up version, way amped up from Garage 77. But I still met Kenny there. We had a really good conversation. We exchanged numbers, and I have just really good human conversations with Kenny. It's not, I didn't need anything from him. He didn't need anything from me. It was just sort of random and how we met. And he ends up being this really interesting, good guy. And I didn't really know his background. I knew him as a human being, liked him as a human being. And I met up with him in LA a few weeks ago. And then I got to know more about him. And his story is just insane. Definitely made for a movie. Definitely a good movie book he's got to write. I want to talk about marketing, and this is kind of a funny question, and I'm really glad that Kenny's on here because he's going to go. It's probably the most strange question I've ever had. You were an ex-BMX pro biker.
Yep. Yeah, I used to do, all the tricks and flips and breaking bones and all that good stuff.
Yeah, and did you grow up in California?
No, I grew up in central Utah, a town called Ephraim. It's a little tiny one-stoplight farm town.
Okay, but Travis grew up in LA. I need someone to be grown up in LA.
Because I grew up in LA.
You grew up in LA. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I used to have a BMX bike, and I can tell you marketing from even a 10-year-old to a 15-year-old boy. I have no idea what chromoly steel is, but I know that if my bike was made out of chromoly steel, that was the best bike. And that was the only marketing I needed. I had no idea what it was, but if you went around to your other friends, you're like, that's not made out of chromoly steel. Like, I didn't know what that meant, but if you didn't have it, you didn't really have a good bike. Is that true?
It is true. 4130 chromoly. That's what it's all about for bikes. I like when I was, riding ramps all the time, and I'd have to bail. The bike would fall 20 feet to concrete, and it would have to hold up. So
yeah,
it works.
Yeah, that was my first exposure to marketing, and I had no idea what it was, but I knew I needed it. And if I didn't have a bike that had it, I didn't want it. Mm-hmm. It was so strange. I was thinking about Kenny, and I was like, I got to ask this question because I'm fully an adult now. I should probably know what it is, but I know that it's necessary. So it's pretty awesome that you're able to answer that for me.
Honestly, I don't even really know what it is. I just see it. And I'm like, that's it.
No, I mean, for me, growing up in LA, it's like I watched this one movie when I was growing up, and it had this 10-speed bike where the guy was doing jumps over cars and all this kind of stuff. And of course, I thought that was cool, not realizing what it does to the bike. I always had warped wheels. I always had warped everything. That 10-speed bike went through way too much. But yeah, I mean, it's fun how that ends up playing in. And the chromoly, definitely, even in the motorcycle world, right? You use a lot of chromoly there too.
Yep, chromoly, steel, all that good stuff. I mean, it goes 65 miles an hour, so when you hit a pothole going that fast, it's got to hold up for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So the idea of the podcast is we've had a ton of people on this podcast, and a lot of them are startups for sure. Some of them are legacy companies, and they all seem to have a very similar story. Kenny's is a little bit interesting because Kenny's the kind of guy that, and Travis and I know a lot of guys who have a lot of ideas, and they just have ideas. When I met Kenny, a lot of the ideas that Kenny has, Kenny actually does. So it was interesting that he was a pro BMX biker, but then you were a clothes designer.
Yeah, so I had a clothing company called TTM Lifestyle, and I grew that pretty big, and then I sold it to some couple on an MTV show. Now there's a retail store of it and all that stuff. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
And then Kenny's got this. Is it called No Sock? What is it called?
It's called Knot Socks.
Knot Socks.
It is designed to wrap around your shoe insole, so you can pull your insole out, and then the sock is made out of bamboo charcoal, which are both natural odor eaters, and you just wrap it around the insole, slide it back in your shoe, and then now, like, if you're by the beach, you don't need to wear socks. You can just slip your foot in your shoe, and then when you sweat, it just goes right into the sock you're standing on.
Why have I not heard about this product?
I don't know.
It's the same thing every time. It's sort of like, and we've had 10 guests so far, and the same thing. You have a really remarkable product. You got something that's ingenious, and for some reason, it doesn't get out there. And I was always wondering. I remember he showed me. And I'm like, I've never seen that before. Why are people wearing these No Socks when they could be wearing these?
Yeah, I think we've sold like 30,000 pairs worldwide, which is cool. We're Amazon's choice on Amazon, which is cool. But so I guess the issue with myself is I want to know what it's like to do something. So after I do it, then I kind of taper off. So like once I do the design and once I, come out with it, I'm like, cool, I did it. And then I'm like moving on to the next project now, even though it's like now it's ready to market and get out there and all that, So I just like things to grow organically rather than push and be salesy and all that stuff. But for sure, between like February and September is like the big months for Knot Socks. And on Amazon, I mean, we sell out very, very quickly. And it's just word of mouth, which is cool. We don't really run ads and all that stuff, but now that I'm getting older and a little wiser, I'm just like, all right, now when I make products, I really need to push it. And cause I don't know, money is different for me, I guess. Like I don't really, you need money to live and you need money to pay bills and all that stuff. But for me, I like to have the experiences of things and I don't chase the money, if that makes sense.
So that comes with maturity, though, because Travis and I can attest to this, and I had talked to you about this too. Just so you know, FYI, every time you talk about Knot Socks, we throw up a Knot Socks ad on the podcast. So we'll definitely be showing that.
Beautiful. So
it'll definitely be out there for everybody to see. But that was one of the things when I sat down with Kenny that I was really surprised with. That unfortunately it takes, and I hate when people say, well, people who say you don't need money or people who don't have money, who never experienced wealth. I can tell you that I've had that experience, and it comes with its own set of problems and it comes with its own set of stresses. And I know Travis and I talked about depression and we talk about panics and we talk about fear. There's a point where you would give everything away just to have peace. And it's something that only happens, I think, when you're old enough to understand what peace is. And you could want that lifestyle. You could have $10 million, $65 million. It comes with $65 million worth of problems. And those problems tend to be just other people that surround yourself with you. But I can tell you from my own perspective, wanting peace, to have a good mind, if you could get rid of depression and panic and it costs $10 million and you could stop thinking about suicide, I would give you $10 million without a question. I want to be here tomorrow. How much does that cost? $10 million. Then take the $10 million. I don't really care. But it's the same question when I talk to Kenny and to you too. For you, Kenny, specifically, when you start something as significant as Old Soren, what does it take inside of you to say, I want to start this, I'm passionate about it, and not just willing to start it, but then willing to go along that journey? This isn't a day thing. This is, if you're starting this is a 5-year, 10-year project. What's inside of you that causes you to do that?
So it's many different things, but when I was younger, growing up in that small little farm town that I'm from, I unfortunately lost, some friends to freak accidents, because in small towns, people get bored, they do dumb things. And that just kind of made me realize how short life actually is. It made me really want to live my best life and do the things that truly make me happy. And then I wanted success and all that stuff. So after I was done riding BMX professionally, I started business, and then I wanted to live in that like nice all glass penthouse skyscraper. Ended up achieving that. I lived like 34 stories up in an all glass, like one of the best views of downtown LA. Lived there for a few years while I was, growing a company to like close to 2 million in a year and a half, and did really well. But I just started realizing I'm not happy. I'm at the top. I'm where I want to be, but I'm not where I want to be, like inside, I guess. And so the interesting thing with Old Soren, going with your question, is when I decided to walk away from that business and, walk away from making all that money, I decided to move to the beach with my wife. We wanted to, or I wanted to take like a year or two off of working just to, kind of get back to simplicity again. And during that time, I was like, the two things that make me very happy in life are cars and motorcycles. So I wanted to get an electric motorcycle, but I didn't find one that I liked. I didn't really like the style of them. And I love vintage everything. So I started this, which is a vintage style kind of based off 1950s, 60s electric motorcycle. And with my business background, I know a lot of manufacturers overseas, and I know how they work. I know all that stuff. I didn't go to college or anything for design. I just started talking with them and sending them, I like this old Triumph. I like this old Honda. I like this old Indian. Can we mash these together? And then I started working with their design team. It took years to get it to where it is now, and now it's a complete finished product. But I was mainly building it for myself. I was just wanting a cool electric motorcycle to ride around by the beach. And then I put it on social media when the first sample arrived, and it ended up getting millions of views, and people were going crazy. And then I was like, all right, so I guess I built my other business without knowing I was building a business. And now I'm full on Old Soren, and it's great. It's like, other than the regulations and the legality stuff, that's not fun at all with, creating a vehicle company. The design part is fun, and the fact that I get to mess around with it every day, all day, is fun. I mean, it's something that like you would want to get off work just to mess with your motorcycle. And I get to do this every day, and it's really cool. And then also, being surrounded by all of my favorite cars as a kid, I can't ask for more, honestly. So it was a big life change that I took from being unhappy, making a lot of money, but being unhappy, and walked away from it. And now I'm here. So it's just a life choice you got to make for yourself on where you actually want to go. And then you end up being there, if you stay focused on it.
Yeah, but you have a certain amount of faith in you that allows you to see this vision. And Travis is very similar when he started RKS. You definitely have to have faith in the plan, faith in yourself. I would say this isn't a religious show, but I've had a ton of people on the show that said the same thing. Faith is probably one of the things that gets you going and keeps you going, and kind of saves you from that depression piece. I knew a lot of people that don't find that amount of faith in themselves until something terrible goes wrong. And it's a pretty, to do what you did, you make it seem easy. Travis does too. You guys both make it seem easy. In actuality, it's the most difficult things to do. And I know with you specifically, and we just talked with Travis on the other podcast, is, building the product, having it produced, it's right behind you, and then getting investors to come in and go, I see the same vision you have, and meeting certain types of people who have different types of agendas with you, and it's not always positive. And I would say fundraising is difficult. Have you found it that way for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, fundraising is very difficult. You get a lot of people that talk a lot, but no action. I had one guy that was going to put in 15 million on Old Soren because I have a list of 8,000 people, and that's ready to order. So, it's a fairly non-risky investment. But as I got to know the guy, he was kind of sketchy in business, and I didn't want to wrap myself with that. And so I, walked away from that, and I walked away from that money, which was very hard. But it is hard. And honestly, I mean, I wouldn't be able to do half of what I do without a supporting wife too. Mm-hmm. She helped me big time. But, the biggest thing for me is I have been completely broke in the past, and I've also had a lot of money, and there's really not a lot of difference. It's like Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are like that. You're crazy, you know. It's like there is a lot of difference, but there's really not. I mean, even my buddy Wayne that owns, like, I'm literally surrounded in $20 million worth of cars right here, and Wayne's very down to earth. He's one of the best people I know, and you know, you'd never know that he had money. He drives like an old 2000, like his daily driver is like an early 2000s BMW that hasn't been washed in 6 months. You know, he doesn't dress like he's got money either, you know, and that's what I love about him. He's just like, but then you walk in here and you're like, holy cow, but he's got a good mindset towards it. He's not letting money kind of take him over. He's getting things that he enjoys. And like for myself, for example, you know, even when I had money versus when I was broke, still my favorite thing in the world is like, you know, driving up by the beach with a good view and having a cup of coffee and sitting on a bench and just staring out. And that to me is like more, it's worth more money than anything I've ever experienced. And you can do that if you're completely broke. And so it's just finding those little joys in life, and then trying to build stuff that you want to do, you know, along the way, and build experiences. And
Kenny, did you feel like you had to go through the hard times or the money side of things though in order to appreciate the balance?
100%. I mean, it's like there's opposing things in all things, right? You know, there's like nighttime, there's daytime, there's depression, there's happiness, there's, you know, the ocean's rough one day, then the ocean's calm. And if you don't get that opposite side, you're never going to appreciate the other side. So, but it's just finding the balance. I mean, people nowadays, they get on social media and they just see, you know, people flexing their Rolls Royces and their, you know, like how I made $3 million in 2 months. And if you're not making $100,000 a month, you're a loser. Like that's how most social media is right now. And sadly, people eat that up. And, you know, it's like somebody could be making $5,000 a month, which is great, but they feel like they're not making enough because of these social media posts. And in reality, the people that are making those posts, they're not even really making that money either. You know, I sadly got to know some of those people that, you know, fish on social media to, you know, buy my course or whatever. And they're really not good at what they do. They're just trying to make money by selling a course. And I stepped away from a lot of those people in my life just because it's just negativity. It's just a bad vibe that I don't want to be around. And, you know, in my mind, if you're barely making your bills, but you're doing things that you like to do in life, you know, I mean, I know surfers that they have like part-time jobs. They're making $30,000 a year in California, which is terrible, but they get to sit and surf every day like they're retired, and they're the happiest people I know. And there's a reason for that, because they get to do what they enjoy every day. Sure, the work part sucks, but it's like they would rather be doing that than be making $1 million a year working 15 hours a day in an office.
Yeah, and that's when we talked about startups, and I was talking about this with Travis, it's about motivation. If you ask someone, you know, why are you starting this business? If you're starting it because you want to be a billionaire, and if that's your motivation, then one, that's very difficult to do. But if the motivation is to be rich, then other motivations in your life revolve around those same types of material possessions. And I can tell you, and I'm hoping that this actually, if there's a trend that actually enlightens people who are younger, that this really isn't that important. And you don't want to go through what you need to go through to achieve something to be validated by somebody else. And we talk about this all the time about self-confidence. Like there's a difference between self-confidence and ego. Ego is self-confidence that needs validation. And if that's what you want, then you just have an ego. You have no self-confidence in doing what you want to get done. And I can only tell you, if enough people talked about this on the podcast, and I'm hoping that we do, having peace is fundamentally, it's probably the most important thing to have. And you don't realize it when it's too late.
Yeah.
And I know, Travis, you've gone through those same types of issues with building your company. Peace, doing what you love, not competing against somebody who has $1 billion, having a wife behind you that backs you. I mean, I have the same thing. It's just
huge.
It's one of those things that you'd pay anything to have someone say, listen, wherever you're going on this journey, I got you. And that's enough.
Yeah.
It's, you don't realize that until later, but I think when you're younger, you surround yourself with people who know that you're someone who's going to get something done. They want to go along for the journey. They want nothing to do with how to get that journey started, but they want to make sure that they're around you when you're successful. And I've seen a lot of that. But the interesting thing about Kenny is we had talked and we had texted back and forth I've known him over, I think it's almost 2 years now, but I didn't know, and I'm not going to talk about Kenny's background specifically, but Kenny's background is significant. And he has that persona, and he has an extension of himself that leads into the entertainment industry. I would say he's a celebrity, but you'd never know that. Kenny is just this dude that you bond with because we share the same values, and that's all that we're actually really needed. I didn't know anything about him until I met him in LA, and we had a good, I think, 2-hour conversation about just life. And it was, the dude is somebody that you want to meet. You want to have him in your life, for the only reason that he's a good guy and he's also successful. And I think that's the issue, is there aren't enough people who are highlighted, who are good people, who know what they want and know when enough is enough. Because I'm not remembering the story very well, but I think there was a billionaire dinner, and I think it was Elon Musk was up there giving a speech, and somebody in the audience was talking to somebody, and this guy goes to this girl in the audience, and she goes, that he's making $400,000 a second just by speaking here. He goes, he's like, that's really impressive. And she's like, no, that's absolutely not impressive. And he says, why is that? She goes, because it's more peaceful to know when you already have enough than to continue to want more. And that's what she came from. I mean, she was wealthy, but she knew enough to know that enough is enough. And this idea of keep going and gaining stuff is just not necessary. And Kenny's a good representative of saying, and this was before we even got on the call, I mean, you've had money and you've turned down money, and you chose a life that you wanted to live peacefully, and that you knew that whatever life you wanted to have, you could have at any moment, but you prioritize peace and family and your wife over this. And do you think that could transcend into people who are younger? Do they need to go through something to finally get here?
Yeah, I mean, you just got to look at what's best for you. I mean, some people know me know my name because of this. And in 2014, I was rumored dating Taylor Swift, and I had a lot of publicity, people reaching out to me, trying to interview me. And during that time, I could have milked it. I could have made money. I could have, basically done anything I want at that point. And I ended up deleting all my social media because it was crazy and it was overwhelming. The rumors were just rumors. And I have a cabin in Utah with no cell service, no Wi-Fi, no cable. It's just straight up, you go to a cabin, you hike, you can go fishing. And during that time when, most people with egos would have been milking this and trying to make themselves a celebrity and all that, I basically shut off everything, and I went to my cabin in Utah for a while until the dust cleared. And I talked to some of Taylor's agents as well, to where we could figure out how to both deny this rumor and all that stuff. And but that's what I did because I wanted peace, like you're saying. I wanted, I wasn't trying to be a celebrity based off of these rumors or anything like that. I mean, I've already done what I wanted to do in the BMX world, and, gotten magazines, got that feel that I've always wanted to feel, and at that point in my life, I just wanted peace. And so that's why I left it alone, went to my cabin, and, I turned down a lot of money. I turned down a lot of big interviews. I turned down a lot of stuff. And, I'm happy I did it that way, because it made me still live a normal life. If you were in the BMX world, you'll know my name and stuff like that. But to the average Joe, I'm just an average person too, and so that's the way I want it. If you think about it, a lot of these big celebrities, which, I know a handful of them pretty closely, their lives aren't as good as everyone thinks they are. They're literally confined to their homes. They do have millions of dollars. They do live in a big mansion, but, as people kind of got the experience, during COVID when you had to stay in your home. Even if you had a big, beautiful home, after, 2 or 3 months, you're going to start going crazy. You're going to start to hate it, and you want to go out, you want to do things. But a lot of these celebrities, they can't do that, because if they go out, they get mauled. And, the first few times when they first become a celebrity, it's probably fun for them. Like, oh, sweet, people know me, I'm getting attention, all that stuff. But after a while, it gets old and you don't want that anymore. And, you got to really look at, you got to think about like what you want in life. And then you got to look at the long term. Like, is this something that I'm going to be happy with long term? And it's not saying that these celebrities don't want to be celebrities anymore, but they don't live a life of freedom, and they don't really live a life of peace either. They got money and they got the home and they get the attention they want, but they can't go out and do normal things. It's like we take for granted when we go out to a mall or we go out to a restaurant and we eat peacefully and we're walking around with our family and friends peacefully. They don't get that peace, and that's what they pretty much have to pay for being who they are. And so, I took a lot of that into account during, that crazy rumored time and all that. And I was just like, I'm going to live my life normally. And that's why I shut everything out and went to my cabin and got some peace.
It sounds to me like basically what you're saying is that you don't need to go through this experience to make those decisions.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing is that, and I actually hear that even from my oldest son, who's currently going to University of Arizona. And I was really surprised to hear from him just a couple of months ago. We were sitting down having breakfast, and he's been talking to older people of our age group, and finding out that money isn't as important. When he talks to his friends, money's important. But when you talk to somebody who's gone through it, it's more about the balance. And what I was really proud of him is that he's listening to them and he's understanding, oh, wait a minute. So you're saying if I have a job that pays, $200,000 a year versus $100,000 a year, but the $100,000 a year, I can do the things I enjoy doing versus the money, I should go after the $100,000. And I didn't even have to instruct him that would be the better thing. He actually knew it. And so what I'm hearing is that if youth listens to the message that older people are saying and they take it as wisdom, then they can actually make a similar kind of decision like you made, Kenny, where you can turn down the money, because sometimes or a lot of times the money comes with a lot of headaches. It comes with more pain, more suffering. And so you don't get that balance anymore.
But you're also competing with social media, which is what I think Kenny was saying too. It's just that you're constantly on TikTok, you're on Instagram. There's this proliferation of people just saying money is the answer. I can make $100,000 a month, or influencers, which I just did a social media podcast a few days ago surrounding social media and the idea that influencers are there to do what they do, which is to influence a certain lifestyle that you think about and that you want. And this is sort of actually, I was going to bring it up with Kenny. I never Googled Kenny. Like when I met him, I didn't go Kenny Sanders, and I met him. I liked him. I thought for some reason we clicked, and that's just fate putting me in his path and him putting him in mine. And just on faith, he seemed like a good guy. You just know when you meet someone that there isn't a bad bone in this guy's body. Then I met him at that garage, and we talked for 2 hours. And when I left, I'm like, this guy's full of shit. There's no way. There's absolutely no way what he's telling me is true. Because I didn't know anything about Kenny like that. I never even bothered to Google him. And I go, he said he dated. There's just, I don't see that. So then I Googled him, and I'm like, wow, he could have been this other person, and he's absolutely not. And when you read about him, and he's right, it's out there, Taylor Swift, and he's not that guy. Like he had every opportunity to go down this path and do something completely global, and the guy is just that guy. And I was really surprised. And part of the reason I have Travis is the same way. Travis is not famous. He's never dated any celebrities. So I wanted the opposite of Kenny to be on the podcast.
I did meet Heather Locklear once, and I didn't know it was her. And she probably appreciated that because I didn't ask her for an autograph. So that's about the limit of my introduction to famous people.
Well, I
Love it.
think that I think the similarity is that when you go down and you see, Kenny's done a lot of really good things, got a lot of good products. He's got Old Soren, and when you look out at the EV market right now, there's a few out there, not what Kenny is doing. And when you go to investors and you say, "Hey, this is what I'm doing," I really feel like, and I talked about this with Travis too, and I'm gonna try to get the same point across for Kenny, is that if investors knew who Kenny was as an individual, as a human being, and then saw the product, I think that matters. I think when you have these VCs and going, the actual story isn't Old Soren. The actual story is Kenny. He's the guy you're buying into. The bike is beautiful, and he's designed it the way he wanted it. The investment isn't in the bike; it's with Kenny. Kenny's the guy that you're going to spend the $500 million on to grow that company, to ideate other products. And when you see it on a piece of paper, I think there's a disservice to both of you guys, that if you just knew what Kenny was about inside and out, then you'd have a much easier proposition to say, yeah, we're bought in on you. We know who you are as a human being. And I think that matters. But I think in reality, it does not. And I don't think you have to have the best product. I don't think you have to be the best person. I think you just need to be the type of person that they can take advantage of for a short amount of time and then bounce. And I think that's the problem. And that's why I'm frustrated with Kenny, because Kenny's a good guy. He's got a good product. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He understands money, family, faith. And if somebody saw that, they'd be, I'm all in. There's no question. I'm all in. Let's do it. Same thing with Travis. You're the same way. Same good product, good man, good family man. And I don't know what it takes. So part of the podcast was to expose you guys for this segment, Kenny, because I'd really like people to see what you're doing. And I think getting to know Kenny on a personal level, it will say a lot about what Kenny is at a business level and what that relationship's going to look like. And the way you've managed what you've gone through. If an investment company looked at you and went, he's done all of these things, he has a good head on his shoulder, he had a path to go this direction and chose not to. So he understands morally what money really is and knows that it's probably better for him to have this experience than anything else. And, we've talked about, and I think, when you watch NFL or you watch any athlete who's gone through a dark time, his mother passed away, he's playing for his mother, and he's got a chip on his shoulder. I think if people understood, it hasn't always been easy, Kenny. You've gone through a dark period, and there was something inside of you that said, I need to succeed, and I need to get myself out of here. If an investor saw that's the kind of person you are, I think that's what they need to see. Someone who has hit rock bottom and climbed all the way out to be successful.
I don't know, man. I honestly, I'm listening to you talk about this with the investors. I have to say that there are a lot of investors that may look differently at Kenny because he walked away from the money, right? I think that there's a lot of the investors is all about the bottom dollar. They don't care about the ethics side of things per se. They just want to know that their investment is as risk-free as possible, and I'm going to make as much money as possible, regardless of the consequence. So they like to disassociate themselves from what it might be doing to our society, what it might be doing to our, to the world. And they just think bottom dollar. So, but as an ethical investor, which is one of the things that I'm very much for, and that I would love to get more exposure on, they would probably appreciate Kenny's response, because what that means is that he cares about the end result. He's not just about the bottom dollar. He's about the long term. And that I think is more important. So there's this short-term side where the investor wants to get a quick return. I want quick money. I don't care how it's done. And then there's this other investor, which I consider the ethical investor, which is considering the impacts this actually has on society, the planet, things like that.
Right.
Yeah, I think the other two is Kenny walked away from bad money.
Yep. And it's funny too, because like my buddy Wayne that owns all these, $20 million worth of cars in this room, people are like, why doesn't Wayne invest in you? And the reason why is me and Wayne are good friends. We don't want that, like, because once there's money involved, then the friendship kind of gets a little weird, because then it's like, hey, I put all this money into you. When am I going to get this return? The friendship's gone at that point. You're still friends, but the friendship is gone. And so I've got another buddy, he's I think he's a billionaire at this point. I helped him design his home in Pacific Palisades, and one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And he's not friends with hardly anybody. He's kind of like, he likes to be alone. But he told me one time, he was just like, the only reason like you're in my life is because you care. And that is like that kind of made me realize, I mean, I'm just who I am. I'm never going to change who I am. But that's for somebody to not care it blows my mind that there's people out there that don't, and that I think that's what kind of gets me down in the dumps with, like, when you look at some parts of humanity, it's like there's people that totally take advantage of other people, and there's people that they don't care about the relationship or the friendship. And to me, I care about the journey. I care about making memories, and I care about the person themselves. If I didn't care about the person, I wouldn't be around that person, even if they had money, and that's what it comes down to is, that you got to keep friendships. You got to, separate money from friendships. And, I've unfortunately learned, that this a couple times in the past with business partners. It's like once money's involved and once money's coming in and all that stuff, then things change and the friendship's a little soured. And so, but Wayne is an amazing mentor for me. I mean, I work on Old Soren from here. I'm here every single day. And, when there's certain things that I haven't experienced yet, because I mentor, younger kids that are trying to get into business, but then when Wayne mentors me, and I feel like I'm this big compared to him, and so it's like I'm always a student. Even if I'm making millions and millions and millions of dollars, I'm still learning from somebody. I'm always a student. And, that's why it's highly important for me to not let Wayne invest into me, because we've built such a great friendship, and there are investors out there that, I could have a great friendship with, but they're few and far between. It's and that's, I've actually turned down some investments in the past too, because, these people are, they are just all about money, and this is a passion project for me. And the last thing I want is someone breathing down my neck every single day to ruin the passion project for me. And so, it would be cool to find somebody that's like, hey, like what you were saying, Troy, like, you're a good guy, you've done all these things, and you've built this out of passion, but also with passion comes a lot of, like, people understand the emotion, they feel the emotion and the things that you do. And I think that's why this has gone viral. It's like millions and millions of views naturally. I've not even spent any money marketing this product at all. It's all been organic. And I think the reason why is because people see that I'm passionate about it. I'm not just like, hey, buy this blanket that I created that's called, Snuggie 2007, even though like it's something that I wouldn't even be into. I'm just trying to make money from that product. People can totally see that. But with this, it's like I get every little detail of it. When designing and building and stuff, it's like I know every inch of that motorcycle because I actually love it, and I think that there's a big difference in, products like that. There's a product that you're just trying to make money on, and there's a product that you actually love, and the one that you actually love is going to take you a lot further than the one you're just trying to make a quick buck on.
Yeah, and I've always asked the same question, and I started doing this. I was at the Web3 Expo a year and a half ago. I did a talk in front of a crowd that was into NFTs and blockchain, and it was a bizarre situation to be in, because I'm so anti metaverse. I'm anti just being with people at a distance and having avatars. And I always ask them, like, what problem are you trying to solve for me with what you're doing? They're like, well, you can meet people in a group virtually, and you can watch a movie in the metaverse, and you can all be in a seat, and you guys can chat with each other. And I'm like, I don't have that issue today. So what's the problem? Well, you can virtually be with anybody you want, and AI can get involved. I'm like, I don't have an issue with any of these things. So they had a difficult time telling me what they're trying to solve. And then I asked them the same question. And when I think of Kenny, I think of this is, and I've asked this in the audience, and they were just completely overwhelmed with it. I don't think anybody even answered the question. But Travis, do you binge watch shows?
Yes, I have binge watched shows.
And Kenny, have you binge watched anything?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. So the question I ask always is, would you binge watch your own life? And they didn't even understand what I was saying. And I was telling them, just understand what you're going through is you would rather watch a show about a guy struggling to get his idea through, has relationship problems, car doesn't start, wants to get ahead. That's everybody. Why would you want to watch somebody else live those problems when you have those same problems? What are you doing differently? And the campaign I came out with was Live Your City, and what it meant was you really need to start figuring out if the life you're living right now is the life you want to live. Because if you're binge watching someone watching TV, that's a pretty sad situation to be in if you don't have to be. And even if you're alone, go out. And part of the campaign was, I've got these tickets at this restaurant you can't get into. It's got a year in advance. I have 4 tickets. And I put it out there socially and say, hey, get off your couch and get to this restaurant. And you have 1,000 people trying to get to this restaurant, but there's only 4 tickets. But those 1,000 people took a journey they wouldn't have taken. You have to leave right now. However you're dressed, get out and just document the drive. And we got to go. Let's go. Which freeway do we get on? Where do we park? And explore that city and get out. And I think that's what's missing. And when I see Kenny, I think you start to learn early on that the journey that we're on is probably the most important piece. The experiences that you have, the people you meet, just life in general. I think with social media, we're missing all of those things. And when I see Kenny with the life that he had, it would be interesting to watch Kenny's life. But I don't think that you can have what Kenny has without knowing what value he has towards peace and towards not making the $10 million and living the way he wants to live. And I know, Travis, you didn't start your company because you thought you were going to be a billionaire. You really knew that you wanted to get this thing built and it had a purpose. And
we even named it Purpose. That was the first product was Purpose.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But for Kenny, for Old Soren, I know this is something that you're passionate about doing, and I'm hoping that this particular podcast, and I think the great thing about this is I'm able to send this out to investors and say, hey, if you're not looking at Old Soren, you should. And it's an EV motorcycle. It's designed very well, but more importantly, Kenny's the guy. I mean, Kenny's the person you're investing in. And I don't think enough investors see the background. They don't know what they're dealing with, and they don't know what horse they're betting on. I think that's the issue. So that's why we're not getting into the bike. I think it's going to do what you want it to do. I can see it right there. It's fantastic. But I think the product and the brand is really you. And I don't know any other way to get that across to people now, except through this podcast, to say, hey, if you've got an investment that you want to make, why wouldn't you make it into a person? And I think that's and I know and Travis, you're probably calling bullshit on that because, like you said, most of the investors don't give 2 shits about the person. They care about the product.
Well, so just to jump in there, the reason why I walked away from all the money I was making is because I was doing something I didn't want to do. I was making money, and it was my business with one of my business partners, good friend in Colorado. But it was actually in the beauty niche. We have nothing to do with beauty. We would ask our girls, like, what's big in the beauty niche? Like, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And like you were saying, Troy, we were going after the money when we started it. We're like 2 straight dudes. We're not trying to jump in the beauty niche because we're passionate about the beauty niche. And I learned a lot about it, which is really cool. I mean, like women are very passionate about beauty. It's wild. And I know for a fact I could start another beauty brand and make that money again if I wanted to. But the difference is, and this goes for a lot of, young entrepreneurs that are trying to figure out what they want to do. I had to learn the lesson to make money doing something I didn't want to do, even though I owned my own company. There's a difference in that. With this, I want to be doing it. I started doing this as not a business idea. I started doing this for myself, and that's the difference. So like for this, if this starts making millions down the road, I'm not going to walk away from this because it's something I actually want to be doing. It's something I'm passionate about, But I also know a lot of other people that are making millions doing things they don't want to do, and they're miserable. And that's the difference. Choose what you want to do or choose what you don't want to do, and they're both completely different paths.
Yeah, I think what you said though that resonates with me is that if you chose that path, that maybe the money isn't part of your agenda, the fact that if it becomes a reality, that you're the kind of person that's going to put that money to good, that it's going to lead to something even much more spectacular, and it's going to be a path to good versus you fulfilling a desire to have a mansion or to live a different type of lifestyle. I saw the pictures of Kenny's penthouse, and I can see how easily you could say, I've arrived, I've got everything. And I can tell you from some of the other conversations I've had with people who are very, very wealthy, they told me that they never felt more empty when they had everything. And it was eye-opening for me to understand that that was the case. And most everyone who's gone down that path told me that the most lonely I've been is when I was on that path. And I'm like, wow, I mean, two of the things I don't want to be is lonely,
right?
and empty. And it's incredible that those two things are synonymous with everybody I've spoken to. And I think it's just, I think it's the TikTok revolution of those people who find value in things versus
people.
It's just crazy.
I somehow end up helping a lot of people with their mental health. It's just, I don't know if I give off therapist vibes or whatever, but it just happens. And I know that they know that I've lived like this certain life and walked away from things that people would never walk away from. So then people, when they're having an issue, they come to me and they're like, hey, I'm going through this. What should I do? And even like celebrities, it's like, I'll talk to them about their mental health a little bit because they're miserable. And the biggest thing I tell them is imagine yourself on your deathbed and look back at your life. Are you gonna be on your deathbed and be like, oh, I had a Ferrari, I had all this? You're not even gonna think of that stuff. The only thing you're gonna think about is experiences in life. Like going out on, like, if you travel to a certain part of the world and you're like, oh, I was in Japan in a certain area and it was beautiful and I can't stop thinking about it. That's worth more than any amount of money. And so, and I learned a lot of this too, like when my grandparents were, kind of on their deathbeds years ago. I spent a lot of time, I kind of what your son did, Travis. I spent a lot of time going and meeting all these other different older people that are, their days are very numbered at that point. And I always ask them, what would you do if you were to do things again? What do you regret in life? The number one thing I heard was, I wish I didn't work so much, and I wish I didn't care about money so much. I wish I would have spent more time with family and friends, and I wish I would have traveled. And so those are powerful words coming from those people, because they are literally like, the end is coming very soon to them. And so the only things that they are thinking is the things that are real. And so, that's why, I live a lot of the life I live, even, if there's not money in it, it's, you can buy a lot of cool things. And I applaud Wayne for what he buys, because he buys old vintage, like, cars that he doesn't go around and flex in and all that. But then you see the younger crowd, they go out and buy like the hottest Ferrari or the hottest Lamborghini, and just to flex and say, hey, I've got money, check me out. But in reality, that's just putting a Band-Aid over, their depression if they have it. It's they're buying their happiness. They're not going out and finding their happiness. And there's a difference in that. And that's what I talked to some of my celebrity friends about too. I'm like, you're having all these issues with depression, but when you go out and you buy that new car or you buy that new really expensive outfit, you're confident for like a week because you just went out and bought it, and you're thinking everyone's noticing you because you got your new whatever it is. But in reality, nobody knows that it's new. Walking out on the street, they're not going to be like, oh, those are a new pair of shoes that Troy's wearing. I've never seen Troy in those pairs of shoes. It's like,
are they Velcro? They're Velcro, aren't
they're
they?
Velcro. They're
always
sketchy,
Velcro.
Whatever it is. But it's like, but in reality, only like that person would know that outfit's new. So therefore they get that confidence. But that's called buying happiness. You got to actually go within. You got to sit on that bench with a cup of coffee in silence for a couple hours and really get in your inner thoughts and figure out you know, what I'm doing in life, is this making me truly happy? Like in my end days, am I going to look back at my life and be like, I'm doing it? Or are you going to, or do you need to make some changes, you know? But once you get into your inner thoughts, once you start to understand what life is truly about, and you start to understand that the most priceless things in life are actually free, like getting a cup of coffee and sitting at an amazing view, $1 million view that you didn't pay for. Going out and getting that travel experience, just a couple tanks of gas to get to where you want to go. That's going to make you happier in the long run than, you know, going out and buying the happiness. And, you know, and if you are into brand new exotic cars and that's what truly makes you happy, do it, you know. Just don't do it to try and impress other people. There's a difference in that.
Yeah, I think you said something pretty profound. I think everyone at a young age should visit a hospice, because I did that this past year. My father passed away. He was in hospice care. And everyone who goes into hospice doesn't come out. Everyone who goes in knows that the last thing they're going to see is the door of that hospice. They will not see that door will not open again. And you said something pretty profound, like when you're on your deathbed, there's a lot of things they're regretting, and none of them are, I wish I would have voted in this particular campaign. I wish I would have stood my ground on this, or whatever the subject matter is. At the end of the day, they want more time. And I think the issue is everyone here is in hospice. We have no idea if my day is today or if it's tomorrow. The only advantage somebody in hospice knows is that at least within 20 days, they're done. But in reality, that's us every day. I mean, I don't know if tomorrow exists. So
life is a game of risk. It's my saying all the way through. And we just have that big news thing, obviously, with what's going on in Maui. And I'm sure a lot of those people going on vacation had no idea that could be their last day. And one of the things that I went through when I went through my depression, which we haven't gotten into, but when I went through my depression, I started wondering, if I were to die today, if I were to be on my deathbed today, would I look back at my life and be satisfied? Would I be happy about what I've achieved so far in my life? And actually, my answer was yes. And the reason why wasn't because of the companies I worked for, wasn't because of the products or anything. It was because of the kids. So by focusing on the things that are important to you, you realize that what makes you happy isn't the money. It isn't even the product. The product, I love the product. But for me, it was more about the kids. And it was that the kids are good and that they're in a good place. And if I were to die today, I would die peacefully.
I think I think that conversation, when we have that conversation about depression, and it is a conversation we'll have, because anybody who decides to bet on themselves will go through it. I think the rational thoughts about the rational thoughts that go into your mind about why you're doing the things you're doing while you're depressed, that you don't know until after, is sort of asking someone, don't drink when you drive. Because if I'm drinking, I'm not worried about driving anymore, because you should have told me that later. If I'm drinking and driving and I shouldn't be, I'm already drinking. So I guess when you're in that state, that mental state, you could tell somebody anything you want, but it's not going to make any sense, because when you're in that dark space, nothing makes sense. Like when you were talking about, like I went through my period, and there was certainly suicide, but part of it was, I just don't want them to find my body. I wasn't even thinking about what's going to happen to them later. I just I don't want them to see my body anywhere. Like I don't want them to encounter that. And that's the planning phase of depression. It is so crazy, because you could start your death vacation by, I want to stay at this hotel. I don't want them to see my body. I want to leave a note. You start planning these things, and your mind will go completely off the rails, but it starts designing your exit. And you start rationalizing those things. You don't learn until, and again, I know that Travis has it, and I know that Kenny has it, but there's this thing inside you that sparks and says, it's time. And for me, the saving grace for me is that I get bored easily. And I started getting bored of being depressed. And I was like, I'm done. Like, there's this thing inside you that says you need to start doing what you need to do. It takes a long time to get there. And it takes talking about it, but I think it'll be a really good conversation. I know Travis has some really good insight into that.
Yeah, I was kind of curious also, like talking with you, Kenny, going through your emotional journey, let's say through life. When did you experience depression? Is this when you were in the penthouse? Like basically, is that when, or was it after that?
I mean, I think us as humans, we go through many different phases of depression. I mean, we're just like nature, you know. We go through winter, spring, summer, fall. I mean, except our seasons are a lot longer. Sometimes we're in a depression for a couple of years. But when I was younger, yeah, I went through a little phase in my life where, like, I mean, man, I was probably like, I'd say 10 years old. My parents just had a divorce, and the depression wasn't really because of the divorce. It was just kind of because I just felt lost even at a young age. I was like, you know, why don't I have friends like my brother has? And, you know, comparing all the time. And then, you know, I kind of found what I wanted to do, and I found BMX, and I took my aggression out on BMX, which made me happy. And then, yeah, after I started making a lot of, so I went through another depression when I was done riding BMX, because I went from having adrenaline every single day of, you know, going through all these crazy tricks and jumps, and if I don't land this, I'm going to break my leg, pretty much type of every single day, to just sitting around and not doing a lot. And I don't get that adrenaline rush anymore. So that played a lot into, you know, some depression that I had to fight through. So then I put that on, you know, business and creating companies and stuff. And then I would say the biggest depression I had was in that penthouse. And it sounds absolutely crazy, because everyone that saw me in that penthouse, people that would come over to have like a drink with me or something, or, you know, they come over and they're looking out of the window and they're like, dude, this is the most profound, amazing view I've ever seen in my life. You're really doing it, man. I'm really proud of you. But in my mind, I'm like, I need to be by the beach. I need to hear birds. I need to see squirrels running. You know, and I'm glad I got the experience. I checked it off the bucket list and all that. But I do remember there was a time where I was like, you know, I would lay on the couch and I had no energy. I was watching as many uplifting YouTube videos as I could possibly watch to keep me out of this depression. And, you know, I think everyone has to, kind of what we were talking about earlier on in this interview, you know, you have to go through the opposite to enjoy the other opposite, you know? And so, but yeah, I understand what you're talking about the planning phase. And I barely touched in that. And I wouldn't, because I know that if I did, but I had my balcony was 34 stories up high. You know, I easily just jumped off of it. But, you know, I have an incredible wife. I have an incredible family, and it would be very selfish for me to do something like that. And we're all here for a certain reason, even if we are, you know, like going through a depression phase. What we don't realize, you know, like I think we were talking about a cab driver when you were here last, that was going through a bad time, but he was doing things for his kids. And what he doesn't realize, even though he's going through the bad phase of his life and he's very depressed, the certain little things he's doing for his kids at that time is worth the world for the kids, and they're shaping the kid's life. And that's what that man is there for. And, you know, so I think that a lot of people don't talk about this enough, but it's something that, you know, everyone goes through. I don't know one human that doesn't go through depression every once in a while. Some worse than others, but it happens, and people just got to understand it's nature. I mean, you go to the ocean and it's super rough and windy and crappy day out. You can barely stand outside because it's so crappy outside. And that would be like the day or the earth going through its depression phase. But then the next day it's like blue skies, oceans, you know, nice and clear and smooth. Then it's a happy day, you know? And so we're the same way. We literally are like nature, and we just have to battle through those bad days. And, I think Jim Carrey said it best too. Depression is, you need deep rest at that time, and you're kind of tired of playing that avatar that you've been playing for a while. So you need to change it up and play a different avatar, which kind of goes into what you were talking about, Troy, about the metaverse and all that. I'm not really for the metaverse type deal, but all that is really an alter ego for people that don't dare to go out and socialize. They can put on this mask, which is an avatar, and sit next to a person at a movie theater in the metaverse that they would never do that in real life. But since they have that mask on, they can sit next to that person and be completely real with them. But then,
and I think,
if you do that in real life, they're not going to do it. So the difference is you got to just learn to do that stuff in real life, and just battle through those bad days, find the good days, and also, not to rant even too much, but long story short, there's days, this is what I've learned. There's days where I'm laying around, I'm like, man, I got to do all this work, but I can't today. I'm not going to do it. And then I think I'm going to get behind. But then there's days where I bust out 5 days worth of work in one day. So that's what makes me feel okay with it. If you don't feel like doing things on a certain day, don't do it, because in the future, there's going to be days where you're going to catch up, and it's because you're just naturally motivated. And, that's just how it is. So, just listen to your emotions, listen to your body. If you don't want to get up that day, don't. You need that rest.
Yeah. I'd also say listen to the universe. There's a lot of things that are on your path that you ignore. Like, I could easily have just parked near Kenny and go, yeah, hey, what's up? Yeah, nice bike. And then walked away and then went inside. But I think a lot of people discount those interactions that I think they're meant for you to participate in, and you can choose to do it or choose not to do it. But it starts to get more lonely when you decide that you're not interested in creating relationships, especially when they just pop up. I mean, there's definitely reasons why I bumped into Kenny. For some reason, I needed that interaction that day. And there's a reason I met Elizabeth. Elizabeth led me to you, Travis, and we had just really interesting interactions. I think if you start ignoring some of the signs you have, could be a piece of paper, or it could be just conversations that you hear. Some of them are people. And if you don't invest in that relationship, on however it happened, you need to see it through. You can decide later it's worth something or it's not worth something. I mean, I've been through, and I know Kenny's probably seen this a lot, is when I left DeLorean, I became less interesting to people and less useful because they wanted something from me. And since I was no longer part of that interaction, I became less useful and they disappeared. And some of them, even after I left, said, hey, can you help me get into that company? I'm like, here's their website. If you want to go, you can. They've got some amazing products that they're coming out with. But I was no longer that it guy. So they disappeared. And I said, you know what? This is a really good time for me to redirect on the people that I've come in contact with that are good people, that have good products. How can I help amplify those people? Maybe I need to do good. And everyone that got on the podcast was like, yeah, whatever you need. I'll be there for you. What time? Some of them said, and this isn't directed at the person you brought, Travis, but a lot of them are like, yeah, I'll be on your podcast, but I need to see a few episodes first to see if I want to be on it.
Right.
And I'm like, well, you've known me for 20 years. I mean,
it's because they're looking at the product instead of the person.
Yeah, they want to know what the podcast is about. I'm like, here's what it's about. I'm like, well, I need to see a few episodes before I decide I want to be on. I'm like, well, I've got a lot of people that want to be on just because they've invested in me as a human being, and they know that we're going to talk about something interesting. And I knew right away those are the people that are really just focused on themselves and what are they going to get out of this conversation. And I told Kenny when I first met him, and he was asking me questions about startups and cars and how to get parts and batteries. And I tell everybody the same thing. I want nothing from you. I'll give you everything I have. I'll give you every contact I have. I don't want to be paid. All I want you to do is be successful. And if I can be part of that and I can give it to you in some way, then it's yours. And Kenny's been the exact same way. No problem. He gives me contacts. I give him contacts, and we do it for the right reasons. And there's nothing expected other than just to see this guy succeed. And Travis has been the same way. I got connected with you because we had a mutual friend that was working for you, and he ended up leaving, and I was there, and I think I've told you guys the same thing. I think we created a company to help you, and at the end of the day, I said, I'm not going to help you in this process. I think I'm going to be hurting you, and I need to step away. And it was a long time ago, but I thought that your journey, I couldn't give it enough time, and I thought that I was just going to hurt you in the end in an official capacity. I'm better for you as a friend than I am as a business partner.
And some deep stuff happening.
And cut.
What's that?
And cut.
I didn't mean for that dramatic pause, but I think you have to surround yourself with people who understand that whatever the agenda is, it's only to support the other person, and I'm hoping that I get that back in some way. And
what happening there with that pause? That's what it's all about. That was a deep emotional. That was it. Like that was literally it. That's why Wayne and I remain good friends, and he's not investing into me because I don't want him to invest into me. He invests his time into me. He invests his ideas and what he's been through. You know, if there's a certain business thing, I'm like, hey, should I do this? He's like, you need to get an NDA for this. Like, I wouldn't do this. I'm like he's investing his time and his experiences in me, which is more valuable than the money. So, but that's what it is. You know, we value the friendship, and what you two just barely had right there. It's like you two value the friendship, and Troy realized that, you know, he was possibly not going to be good, like a good egg on the business because he didn't have enough time. So he stepped away, and it takes a lot for that. That means that Troy's not with you, Travis, to just make money. He wants you to succeed. And that's it, man. Just that's it.
And that's what I've always felt from Troy. And that's the thing, is that Troy, from the first day I met him, has been that way. And he's always been a great influencer, and I can always bounce things off of him. And that's where you must have that same appreciation. It's where if I have a question or I'm not sure which direction I want to go in, I know that I can always call Troy and give him the whole landscape, and I know I can get a respectful answer back. And it's not often that you get that. A lot of times you get somebody who you ask them the question and then they talk to you like you're an idiot, or, you know, or they just don't really know anything and they just kind of cloud it over with a bunch of fluff. When I talk with Troy, that's one of the things that I do appreciate, is that I get a clear, concise answer. I'm going to hear exactly what he thinks, and it'll be done in a respectful way.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too that's interesting,
and if he wasn't married, I would be marrying him. But he's taken, so that's
only in a state that would allow us to get married.
That's one.
Only in a state. Is the fact that there are times when Travis and I don't talk for a long time, and it's the same thing with Kenny. I don't talk to him every week, and a month or two could go by. And I remember telling Travis, I go, we're not talking, but things are working in the background. Whatever I'm doing, you know, if we don't talk for 2 months, everything that I'm doing on my end to kind of move forward with myself, I'm always bringing along everybody with me. And it might just be an update. Like Travis, I said, I'm doing this podcast, and I want to bring you along. And here's all the work I've done over the last 2 months. You know, we have a platform we can use. We have the websites. We've got merchandising. I've been doing this whole setup. And if you'd like to participate, I've been thinking about you along this journey. I want you to be part of it. So it's not that I've forgotten about him or we don't need this weekly conversation. Just know in the back end, everything I'm doing, I'm always going to try and bring everybody with me. And I think that's the important piece, is having that trust and going, you know, it's happening in the background. I know I haven't talked to him, but whatever journey he's on, just know that he's going to try and make me part of that journey in whatever way you want to participate in. And I think that's really a healthy relationship to have, versus I need something from you. You know, how can I amplify myself through your channel? And that's not what this channel is about. It's getting to know Kenny at a very deep level, to understand what kind of businessman he is, to understand why you'd invest in Kenny, why you'd invest in Old Soren, because 10% of Old Soren is the bike, 90% is Kenny, and having him as an investment. Are you kidding me? Absolutely. There's no question. Whatever, if that was a toothbrush behind Kenny. I'd be like, that's probably the best toothbrush in the whole world. And that's what I'd want to buy.
And the other thing that I would add to that is if you were to meet Kenny's friends, like your true friends, the ones that stuck it through with everything, I bet it could tell a lot about Kenny without even meeting him. So, right. So I think, you know, as you've gone through your stuff, Kenny, I mean, you've had those big friend groups where, you know, they're friends with you at the time because of whatever reasons, and then they kind of fall off. You know, I don't know, maybe you can talk through some of that, you know, just with the friendships that you do have. And we kind of just touched the base on it a little bit, but that strength of friendship, the journey to that, what does that feel like for you?
Yeah. So friendship is very weird. So I have a lot of acquaintances, a lot of them. But friends, so I used to have a lot of friends, you know, as far as like in high school. So we all go through this, like after high school, we're like, wait, I'm not hanging out with friends as much as I used to. And it's because we're kind of growing up when we kind of get our own lives after that. In the BMX world, you know, when I had sponsors, I had drink sponsors. So my garage was full of pallets and pallets of free energy drinks. Come on over, grab whatever you can take.
You made all kinds of friends.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I had like I was sponsored by DC Shoes for a minute, and wow. I had, you know, a lot of DC stuff and snowboards, whatever it is you wanted, and Skull Candy headphones. Here's a backpack full of a bunch of Skull Candy headphones. But once my sponsors and all that started like dropping off because I was no longer riding and I was getting injured a lot, then those friends stopped coming by as much. And then I start realizing, oh, interesting. You know, they're kind of around for the product and not around for hanging out, you know? So I learned real quick on that. And then now, you know, I'm 37 years old. I would say I have three like friends, maybe four friends that I consider my best friends.
Oh, they're all going to want to know their names, by the
way. Don't do it.
No, don't do it.
And then the rest are acquaintances, you know. And the funny part is one of those four best friends, he's probably the longest one that stuck around. I mean, we've been friends since 2004 maybe. And, you know, it's like we haven't even seen each other in years. But we send each other memes all the time on social media every day. I mean, we interact with each other every day, laughing about certain things, but we literally haven't seen each other in the flesh for years. But the fact that like we keep in touch like that is cool, you know? And also when you're older, you know, you got to understand you have your own family. Like my wife is my best friend. And, you know, I would shut down almost every invitation to anything to hang out with my wife like I do every day, every night. You know, we usually watch like a movie at night, we'll binge watch a movie, like a show or something on Netflix at night. And to me, that brings me more peace than like going to the hottest Hollywood party. And I would definitely turn down that hot Hollywood party to hang out with my wife like I did the night before and the night before and the night before and the night before, because that's what makes me happy. And that is, yeah, it's like friends. It's a weird word. It is a very weird word. You know, you got acquaintances and you got friends, but keep like very few people that are the best ones close to you, because nobody realistically can have like 10 really good friends that they're surrounded by all the time. That's a lot of work. That's a full-time job. You know, you just got to keep close friends close. And what you were saying, Troy, it's like sometimes you go months without talking to each other. Doesn't mean that your friendship's diminishing. It just means that you're busy with your family. I'm busy with my wife and friends and family and stuff like that. Acquaintances, I guess. But you know the real ones. That's the difference. You know the real ones.
Yeah, and I would say that if you have 10 friends, 15 friends, you're in a misery loves company circle. You're not. You don't have good friends. If you narrow down what all of you have in common, you're all miserable, and you all want to be miserable together.
Yeah, I mean,
I've seen
that you have to recharge from. I mean, I have some friends, acquaintances that I'm with them for 3 hours, and I feel like I have to recharge for 4 days after being with them.
Right.
And that's what goes back to what you say, Troy. It's peace. You want to be around people that just you feel peace around. You could be around them all day. Time flies by like that, and we've all experienced that when we first start dating. You know, you find a significant other and and time, you can be with them for 7 hours and it feels like an hour and it's not enough. That's the real stuff right there. But it's like the other people that's like, all right, I need to come up with an excuse to get out of here. It's like, that's an acquaintance,
Yeah. So Kenny, how does someone get your bike now?
So you can go to oldsorenmotorcycleco.com, and we're sold out on the Founder Series, but you can email me and we can figure something out. And I might be reopening up some of those orders, but right now, since I'm independent from investors, they have to put $4,000 down to start the build of the bike, and then the other $4,000 is due at delivery. So it's $8,000 plus tax for the bike. It goes 65 miles an hour, 90-mile range. But yeah, it's the only way I can get going without an investor. And so the people that want this bike are basically the investors of the company to help me grow. So,
yeah, I'd love to. We'll obviously promote that here. I think showing everybody who you are as a person is going to get some really good attention, I hope.
Oh, yeah.
And show you as the brand, and show at a human level, this is why you'd want to invest in Old Soren, because they've got Kenny there. It's a no-brainer. I don't want to feel too bad for Kenny. He's got a fantastic, I saw a picture of his wife. Was she a model also?
She's a professional figure skater.
Professional figure skater. Maybe she just looked like a model, but she's beautiful. Don't feel too bad for Kenny. He's had some ups and downs, but this guy, he's lived a pretty good life. He's a good human being though too. So I think that's the most important thing, and that's the only reason we do this podcast is we get good people. I have a ton of people who have products that they want to come on and talk about, how we can make them, wealthy and give them all the visibility. That's just not the intent. The intent is to kind of showcase who they are as a person, and then here's the product. And if you're buying the product, then you're buying Kenny. And I think it's just phenomenal. I'm really glad that you're on the podcast. And obviously I want to have you on again. I think you've got some great advice on growing businesses. And I think the mental health side, I think, is going to be an important topic too, just to kind of help people navigate. I don't think they plan for this. I don't think they plan for that particular piece of the story when they're going to build a company. It gets you when you least expect it, and it'll get you very fast.
Yep.
And managing it may not be depression, but it could be a situation for panic attacks or some other vertical from depression. You have to maintain the focus you have for the business and then manage this other aspect of depression. And it's very difficult to do, juggling those two things. And no one, I've done it many times. And Travis, I don't know that you prepared during your business case when you were going to get depressed, but no one plans for it. But you should absolutely plan for a little bit of that mental health break to say it's going to happen. I need to be prepared for it. And then how do I make sure that when it does happen, I can crawl out? And I think we'll have a podcast on talking about that. But Kenny, you're an amazing dude, man. We will post your website here, Old Soren. Make sure that we get you connected with Kenny. Do you have any social channels you have with Old Soren?
Yeah, so everything is Old Soren Motorcycle Co. And then my personal Instagram. I'm not a big social media guy, but I do Instagram every once in a while. It's Kenny B. Sanders.
Kenny B. Sanders. Cool. Well, it was fantastic having you, Kenny. Travis, it was okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's all right. But Kenny,
You're okay.
You're the highlight. Actually, it was the first time I got to meet you, Kenny, just so that the audience knows, and fantastic. I'm so impressed with you. So Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I really enjoy both of you too. It's great. And I hope that we, keep chatting even off the podcast and everything.
Of course. 100%.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Maybe I'll be friend number 5. I'm going
Love
to
it.
5.
Love it.
Well, he won't say your name. He'll just say he's got 5 best friends.
Yeah.
Which is
No
what
one
he needs
wants
to
to know who my best friends are other than my wife.
Perfect. It's been a pleasure.
Cool.
Yeah.
See you, Kenny. Thanks, Travis.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Here I find you. I think I can love